Well, good morning, friends. So glad we're gathered here. Congratulations, you are the on-time friends. You're the early birds. Brew City Church is the late arriving church, so well done. If you're able, let's stand while we begin our time in worship. And let's just center ourselves as much as we can in this moment. I'm just going to be quiet just for a minute. There'll be doors opening and feet walking in. Those are welcome sounds. We'll be able to hear the kids, but let's quiet ourselves from the rush of getting here and try to be present in this moment, present to one another, present to the God who is with us, present to ourselves. And God, I do thank you for this place, for this group of people that I consider friends. With all sorts of stories and situations and realities in our lives that fill in the spaces and overwhelm us sometimes. But we just say this morning, here we are, God. In the midst of the noise and the chaos or the silence, here we are. Would you take advantage of this time? Would you encourage us? Would you call us in, invite us in deeper? Would you remind us of the story that we are a part of? So thank you. And now we worship you, God. Amen.
Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. I'll worship Your holy name. The sun comes up, it's a new day dawning. It's time to sing Your song again. Whatever may pass and whatever lies before me, let me be singing when the evening comes. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. I'll worship Your holy name. You're rich in love and You're slow to anger. Your name is great and Your heart is kind. For all Your goodness I will keep on singing. 10,000 reasons for my heart to find. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. I'll worship Your holy name. And on that day when my strength is failing, the end draws near and my time has come, still my soul will sing Your praise unending. 10,000 years and then forevermore, forevermore. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul, worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul, I'll worship your holy name. Bless the Lord, bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul, worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul, I'll worship your holy name. I will worship your holy name. I will worship your holy name.
You can have a seat. Well, good morning again, friends. Yeah, good morning. It's good to be here. My name is Randy. I usually do the sermon time, so I'm not usually up here right now. And that affects my whole morning because I'll usually get up and I just read through my sermon several times so I can give you something that's not horrible, usually. That's the goal, right? But this morning, I'm not giving the sermon. We have my friend, Rabbi Noah Cherkoff is here. We're going to have a fun time of conversation. I'm really excited about it, but that meant I didn't have to get up and read my sermon over a couple times this morning. So what I did, I'm sorry, I'm really personalizing this morning. I read the newspaper. I also am old school enough that I still get the newspaper, like they still make them, if you didn't know that. And I enjoy it. So I open up the newspaper, and on the front page of today's newspaper, did anyone else see it? Wow. Oh, all right, Tracy. Yes. Tracy, what was on the front page of the newspaper this morning? Thank you, sir. For those of you who couldn't hear Tracy, the front page of the newspaper was a big cathedral, a steeple, really beautiful photo. But the story was how the Catholic Church was exploding 60 years ago, and they were building buildings all over the city, all over the nation, really, but all over the city, and now there's too many Catholic Church buildings. Now they're trying to sell them off and combining parishes, and all this property is a problem because there's 100,000 less Catholics in Milwaukee, they say, than there were in 1964. Startling in many ways, right? And the numbers are not just that way for the Catholic Church. All over the church in our nation, the numbers say people are getting less and less interested in the church. That's startling. I've been thinking about it and talking about that for a number of years now. And it's not just the church either. People are just getting less religious in connecting and affiliating with religious organizations less in our world. And these kind of statistics and data and conversations are worrisome for people like me, not just because my livelihood is affected by it, but because I care about the church. Do you care about the church? Yeah. But also, what I'm coming off on the heels of is I was in Denver for a gathering of church thinkers and leaders and podcasters, and I'm not a conference guy, right? Like pastors go to conferences and we hear what other people are preaching about and thinking about and how you're doing church and what are the new innovations and blah, blah, blah. Mostly it makes me want to barf in my mouth a little bit. I'm not a conference guy. I fall asleep and I do all the things, but this one was different. There were some incredible pastors and mostly theologians and biblical scholars. And there were conversations that were happening that, to me, counteracted all the news I've been hearing. And these conversations, friends, are conversations that I've been dreaming about having in church spaces for years, but I never thought I could. There are people. There were people at this conference, and we talked about people in people groups who have been historically excluded from church conversations and church spaces, people who have been rejected and said, no, thanks, but no thanks, you're not welcome here. And these people are front and center in these conversations about what does it mean to be the church in America in 2024. These are live, beautiful, brilliant conversations, and all I'm trying to tell you is, this is a really exciting time to be following Jesus in America right now. It can be depressing. We have an election happening, and there's more polarization happening than we've ever felt, and maybe you feel it. Maybe within your family units, or maybe you're here this morning because you couldn't be at your old church because of the election or because of all sorts of things. You know what I'm talking about? It's easy to get overwhelmed by these realities, but I want to tell you, the Holy Spirit is moving. God is doing something beautiful and unique in our moment, and we get to be a part of it. That excites me. I'm excited to be here with you is what I'm trying to say. I'm excited to be here with you this morning. I'm excited to be the church with you and be figuring this out together with the help of the Spirit, being led in new and unique directions when it feels like there's despair and we're being torn apart and the church is being ripped from us in some ways. I want to tell you, God is doing some new and beautiful and fresh things. And in my former life, when I was a little bit more Pentecostal, there's a word that I would use to describe that. Do you know what that word is? Revival. See, that word became a dirty word to me for a while. I felt like people were just looking for experiences or feeling good about themselves, but I sense and I taste something like that. New things are happening. It's a brilliant time to be a person of faith and to be the church together. Now, something that the church has done historically together for thousands of years in people of faith is do this thing called liturgy. Now, liturgy, we're a formerly evangelical church. We are in a non-denominational church. Liturgy doesn't usually go together with churches like us. But I've come to really love liturgy. I think we have come to really love liturgy. And there's a couple of reasons for that, because some of us will see a liturgical prayer and will think, I left the Catholic Church for those reasons, because I don't want to be part of a monotonous, robotic prayer reading time. Do you know what I'm talking about? I grew up Lutheran. I did that. But here's why I love these liturgical prayers that we're going to get to read in a moment. For one thing, liturgy is literally called the work of the people. See, we get to speak out a prayer in one voice together. We don't often do that. We listen to people praying, but now we get to raise our voices together in a prayer in unity as a community before God. We've been studying the book of Exodus, and what I've said many, many times is that for the ancient Israelites, everything was about community. All these questions, we ask questions about my individual little bitty life. They were always thinking about the community, and that's what we get to do, is we get to pray and speak to God as one people together. That's powerful to me. Another thing is, sometimes I just don't have words to say in prayer in and of myself. Am I the only one? And sometimes I need some prayers that were inspired by the scriptures and written by a poet to be able to give my spirit words. Do you know what I'm talking about? This prayer that we're going to pray together is based on Jeremiah 6, I believe. And there's going to be words. It's basically the theme is seeing this peace that Jesus dreamed of ruling and reigning on the earth as it does in heaven. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to kind of get ready to pray this prayer with your friends in this room. Or if you're online this morning, praying together with us and with friends online who wherever they are. And this is going to be, again, about peace. And so I want you to just reflect in and of yourself. The peace doesn't mean just conflict and wars across the world, but it does mean that. I want you to take in the reality that we can do this, but there's parts of the world where they're underground because they can't do this. Where there's bomb and air raid sirens going, not knowing if we're going to our kids are going to see tomorrow. That's a reality for some people in the world. Take that in this morning. When we talk about peace, though, we talk about peace between us and the people around us. Maybe there's some peace that God needs to bring us in some of our relationships or some of the ways that we're seeing some of the people in our lives. I want to give you an opportunity to just reflect on this yourself, and maybe peace within ourselves. Maybe peace wouldn't describe our inner lives these days. Maybe for you, more anxiety or more distress or weight would describe your inner life today. And I want to just give you an opportunity to reflect and invite the peace of God. So I'm just going to give us 30 seconds of just reflection to get into that place, and then I'll ask us to stand. So let me pray to begin our time. God, we just ask you, Holy Spirit, I just ask you, would you come and prepare us to be able to speak these words out together from a place of integrity, from a place of longing for your ways and your peace. Now, if you're able, if you could stand, whether you're sitting or standing, you do what you want, but I like opening my hands as kind of a posture to take when I'm doing a prayer of confession. You do what you want, but let's read together. Mine, I'll say the leader, we'll all say all together. Oh Lord, all around us people cry peace when there is no peace. How can there be peace when voices are silenced, people suffer, and rights are denied? How can there be peace when bombs are falling, countries at war, and justice is denied? Oh Lord, all too often we are the ones who cry peace when there is no peace. How can there be peace when people around us are lonely, stereotyped, and abused? How can there be peace when our own nations use violence in the pursuit of peace? Oh Lord, we confess our brokenness, we confess our complicity, we confess our contentment with peace that is only about our own personal well-being. Oh Lord, draw us to yourself that we might live in your grace and pardon. Challenge us to see through false declarations of peace, empower us to be peacemakers. O Lord, we stand at the crossroads and look. Show us the ancient paths where the good way lies. Give us the courage to walk in it, that all may find rest for their souls. Amen. Yes, God, we cry together in one voice for peace in ourselves, for peace in our relationships and lives, for peace in our homes and our neighborhoods, for peace in this city, God. We cry out for peace, and we cry out for peace in this nation as we feel more and more separated and polarized and pulled apart. We cry out for peace. Would you do that in me first and then in us? And we cry out in our world for peace. For the mothers and fathers who are worried about their children living another day, or who have lost one, or the orphans who have lost their parents, we cry out for peace, for your way, God. And now, as a hopeful declaration of what your kingdom is and will be, we worship you now in the midst of this world. Amen.
There is a love that calls me by the name, sure as the sun, the moon, the stars remain. Your love for me will never change. Jesus, your love, Jesus, your love. There is a love that takes me by the hand, uniting my heart to find its home again. and where you are is home to me. Jesus, your love, Jesus, your love. So let my heart tell you again, when seasons change and stories end, your steady love, it will sustain me through it all. Jesus, your love. There is a peace that stays though storms may come. I hear your voice within the winds that blow. I hear your song, it calls to me. Jesus, your love, Jesus, your love. There is a strength that rises up in me to know that you've been here before me, a strength beyond what I can see. Jesus, your love, Jesus, your love. So let my heart tell you again, when seasons change and stories end, your steady love, it will sustain me through it all. Jesus, your love. There is a peace that stays though storms may come. I hear your voice within the winds that blow. I hear your song, it calls to me. Jesus, your love, Jesus, your love. There is a strength that rises up in me to know that you've been here before me, a strength beyond what I can see. Jesus, your love, Jesus, your love, Jesus, your love, Jesus, your love. So let my heart tell you again, when seasons change and stories end, your steady love, it will sustain me through it all. Jesus, your love. So let my heart tell you again, when seasons change and stories end, your steady love, it will sustain me through it all. Jesus, your love, Jesus, your love, Jesus, your love, Jesus, your love, Jesus, your love. shall rise to thee. Holy, 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 merciful and mighty, God in three persons, blessed Trinity. Holy, 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 all the saints adore thee, casting down their golden crowns around the glassy sea. Cherubim and seraphim falling down before thee, which wert and art and evermore shall be. Holy, 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 though the darkness hide thee, though the eye of sinful man thy glory may not see, only thou art holy, there is none beside thee, perfect in power, in love and purity. Holy, 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 Lord God Almighty, all thy works shall praise thy name in earth and sky and sea. Holy, 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 merciful and mighty, God in three persons, blessed Trinity. God in three persons, blessed Trinity. You can have a seat.
Well, before we get going with the rest of our morning, I want to let you know about a couple of things going on around here. And these are just opportunities for us to be the church. They're opportunities for us to engage with one another. There are ways for us to serve the church, which is serving the community, and ways for us to get to know each other and dive in deeper into the life that is following Jesus. So let's see what we've got here. First thing is, we need some help with coffee. I see a few friends with coffee cups. That doesn't make itself. So we would love your help. And this is just an easy thing. You don't have to be a barista, an expert at making coffee. We will tell you how to push the buttons. It's all pre-measured. It's fantastic. We just need some help. So if you could sign up in the back over by the Welcome Center, there's a QR code. You can do that with your phone. If you don't have a phone, just sign up and we'll get in touch with you. But that would be a huge help. And it's a great way to get to know people, if you don't already, is just doing things like this. Let's see another one. Yeah, this is one that nobody likes, but it's a reality. Snow shoveling, we just need help. And we don't have a ton to shovel, but what we have is important because this is a place where lots of people walk every single day. So we want to just be a good neighbor. We want to keep shoveled all the time. Particularly if you're local, if you live around this area on the east side or downtown area of Milwaukee, we would love your help. You can, again, sign up at the info table, and maybe we'll have an easy winter and you only have to shovel once. That'd be fantastic. Who knows? Sign up. We would love your help. We're so grateful for your help and things like that. Family membership class. If you're new around here and you would like to just get to know us as a church, you'd like to actually say, I want to be part of this church family. I want to be a member here. We get questions. What do we have to do? Here's the easiest first on-ramp is a family membership class. This is a 1-week class offered 2 weeks. So don't sign up for both weeks unless you want to hear the same things over again. You're really excited about what you heard the first time. Other than that, this is just being offered on different Sundays, so it's available to more people. But October 27th or November 10th, right following the Sunday gathering, we'll gather upstairs at about noon, and it's about a 1-hour class. Is that right, Ian? About a 1-hour class. Ian Benson, who's an elder here, will lead that. It's a fun time just to get to know the background of Breeze City, what we believe, what we're about, and how you can get involved. That's how you be a part of this church family, is by getting involved and getting to know people. Next, Conrad, thank you, sir. We have learning communities every once in a while. These are ways to dive in together and to learn as a community. That's why they're called learning communities. They used to be called small groups. Now they're learning communities. This next one that we're offering is my friend Marianne Sanders is talking about Christ-centered yoga through a curious lens. I love all those words, especially the curious parts. Curious lens. If you're kind of squint-eyed about yoga, be curious. And come to learn, and come to be open, right? So I want to invite you to that. That's Monday evenings at 6 p.m. right here, beginning November 4th for 3 weeks. So 3 weeks straight, then we're done. But take advantage of that time. Marianne is a practitioner and an expert in this, and has done amazing things in this church family through the practice of yoga, centering on the person of Jesus. It's a beautiful thing. So that's beginning November 4th, 6 p.m. here. And what's next, Conrad? Boxes of Love. In this is a time where we're going to be bringing you, through the end of the year, we're going to be bringing you a couple of ways to be generous and invest in the community in Milwaukee. Here's the first one. Boxes of Love is something that we've done for many years now. The reality is that Milwaukee is full of families and homes with families and children who don't have the means to get a Thanksgiving dinner for their family. And we don't think that should be so, and we want to help. We want to bring about more Thanksgiving goodness to our community. So there are boxes. Where are they, Shelley? In the back corner. Oh, by the info center. I'm looking at them right there. Back in the corner. Grab a box, and then there's an envelope. The envelope, you put $20, a $20 check or cash in so that the family can buy a turkey. And then there's a list that you take that box to the store. There's a list. You do the shopping list. You fill out the list. Check off the list. And then you just bring it back here with the check, with the envelope sealed with the check or money of $20. And boom, you just provided a family with a Thanksgiving meal. So you can literally grab an envelope, go to the Metro Market after service, bring it back, and you're done with your Thanksgiving blessing somebody. Or you can take it home. You can take 4 of them if you want. But we would love to have a bunch of boxes to be able to give to people in the community this Thanksgiving. And the deadline for that is November 17th. You got tons of time. Let's bring a bunch of boxes to the community. And I think that's the last one. Is that right, Conrad? And the last one means, I just want to tell you we're so grateful for your financial partnership in helping come alongside and partnering what happens in and through this place. So if you want to give, if you're part of this church family, this is just for people who are part of this church family, there's ways to give. You can give online. There's the website and the backslash and all the things there. There's a box right by where my friend Bob is standing. It's secure. We deposit that every morning. And then you can do the mail thing if you are old school with, I'm old school with the newspaper. Maybe you're old school with mailing in your gifts and ties. Who knows? Thank you however you do it. Deep breath. We've been in, as a church family, the book of Exodus for about a year. We started last October walking through this absolutely epic book, the second book of the Bible, which is one of the most formational stories and books, I would say, in human history. How many of us grew up watching every Easter the Ten Commandments? Did you guys do that? Still do, my man, yes. These stories, many of us heard in Sunday school, and they captured our imagination. Stories of seas being split in two, stories of staffs being turned into snakes and rivers being turned into blood. All sorts of crazy things you only hear about in the movies and the Bible, right? But we've been watching this heart of God, in particular in the last few months, who just wants to be with God's people. And so this morning, this is one of the last weeks we'll be in the book of Exodus. We got a couple more weeks after this, but we had my friend Rabbi Noah Chertkov several months ago. I don't remember. Do you remember when? February. Thank you for keeping track of that. And I wanted to have Rabbi Noah back just to be able to speak into what this book means to Rabbi Noah's tradition and community, but also to help inform the way we see this in a holistic sort of way. So, Bruce City Church, would you welcome back my friend, Rabbi Noah Chertkov?
And thank you, Randy. I think last time we decided that it would be Randy and Noah.
Yes, thank you.
And it is always good being with you, and thank you for inviting me back. It's wonderful to be here with your church.
Thank you, and you have a friend this morning
I
with
do.
you.
My daughter Hannah is with me.
I'm sure she's excited that I spotted her out.
And that's right. She's thrilled. She's thrilled. And she knows that I talked about her and her brother and sister last time that I was here, too.
Yes,
Yeah.
awesome. You mind if we dive right in?
Sure, please.
Yeah. So first thing I want to know, when I talk about last October, that means something to your community, and you and I have talked and stayed current, but can you just tell us, how is your community doing?
Yeah, thank you, Randy, for asking that. You know, in the Jewish calendar, we observe the lunar calendar, and so
What does that mean exactly?
so that means that while most of the world follows the solar calendar,
Okay.
we follow the phases of the moon, right? And so we just celebrated Rosh Hashanah into Yom Kippur. That was actually the beginning of the new moon, that period of time, and that meant when we talk about new moon, it's like when the moon is at its darkest.
Got it.
And then we commemorated Yom Kippur just about, wow, it feels like a long time ago, but it was actually last week.
Yes.
And
Which
right
is
now, yeah,
the most major holiday.
that's right. And this is the most relaxed you'll see me all year.
Yes.
I'm already starting to think
Amen.
about my sermons
Amen.
for next year. And now we're in the holiday of Sukkot, which is an 8-day festival where we create a sukkah, a booth, and we dwell in those booths for 8 days. And so we've been eating our meals in the sukkah and celebrating the sukkah. And at the end of Sukkot, there is Simchas Torah, which is where we turn the Torah back, the 5 books of Moses, back from the very end. We read from the very end and turn back to the beginning. And on Simchas Torah last year, when we were dancing with our Torah scrolls, and we left the synagogue and we were celebrating that time, and they were celebrating Israel, is when word started to come through that a surprise attack had taken place.
That was October 7th.
So that's right. And this year, on Wednesday night and on Thursday, we are going to be reciting Kaddish, which is the prayer for those who passed away, for 1,200 people. And thinking also and praying for their return, so that 101 hostages to return who are still, we believe, are still within Gaza, will be praying for their return during that period of time. So there's a lot of pain in the Jewish community right now. When we think about October 7th, it is, after that unprovoked attack, we also think about October 8th and 9th, where when we look out into our cities here in the United States and in our college campuses, as a Jew, it was hard to see people, in a sense, celebrating the events of October 7th. and supporting that attack throughout the course of this year. Also, in the Jewish community, we take no joy in the death of innocents. So while we're mourning the deaths of 1,200 who died on October 7th, who were murdered on October 7th, and while we are praying for the return of hostages, we are also mourning the deaths of innocents on both sides of the conflict, whether it's in Gaza or in Lebanon. So the challenge of being a Jew right now is holding, in tension both our sadness and our anger and our fear about what's happening, but also trying to hold that compassion as well for others, which was what my Yom Kippur sermon was about, was trying to hold in tension the anger that we might be feeling and feeling that we're alone in this, but also the feeling of compassion that we need to have for others.
I would imagine if we talk about how your community, how you're feeling, but how your community is feeling, words like fear, anger, anxiety, despair, is that?
I think that that's fair, but also the Jewish condition is one of hope. When we think back about our tradition, it's a 3,000-year tradition, and most holidays, function around the idea is they tried to kill us, we survived, let's eat, right? That's what most Jewish holidays are. And considering our history, that gives us a sense of hope when we look to the future, which is, okay, just like the moon, things work in a cycle. Yeah. And though it feels like we're in a point in which we're at its darkest, that's when you see a little bit of light or start to emerge. And our hope is that these things move in cycles and that there can be more light and that the world can experience some healing.
Yeah, thank you. Last question about this, and then we'll get into Exodus. But just so we can have an awareness, so we can hold and carry you guys in our hearts, and we can also hold you and carry you in our prayers. You have mentioned to me that, people don't think about this in regard to places of worship, but you said your security budget has exploded through the roof. Can you just give us a little taste of that, just to give us a glimpse into the reality for your community right now?
So the reality of our community is that when you come to Congregation Shalom, to our congregation, you'll see security cameras, you'll see, hopefully, you'll see a subtle security, you'll see security guards, you'll see bulletproof glass that has, you won't see that, but bulletproof glass has
that you had to have put in this year.
We had to have put in this year so that our young people feel safe in their religious school classrooms. There have been a number of threats made against Jewish institutions over this year. Those threats, unfortunately, we've learned to take them seriously after the Tree of Life shooting and beyond. After September 11th as well, we had to increase the security in our congregations. So the security has been a part of our budget as a congregation for a long time, but it has certainly increased by at least $150,000 to $200,000 a year since what we've seen happen over the course of the past year.
Yeah. Thank you for just bringing us into that reality. We love you. We're with you. As we think about Exodus and the story of what we call Exodus, what do you call Exodus?
Well, we call it Shmot,
which is,
for lack of a better term. So
Shmot sounds like an expletive.
Shmot actually means names. Yeah, it does,
Nice,
a
good.
little bit.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to Shmot you.
Yeah, that's right.
Sorry.
Don't,
Sorry. Yep.
Which actually,
I had to
that
do
makes like that. What you just said was, I will name you. Actually.
Oh, there you go. Good.
But or names you because it is in the plural form. But we actually name Torah portions and books after the first distinguishable words, Hebrew words of the book, which makes it a lot easier to find in the Torah because there's no indexes in the Torah. There are no verse numbers. It's just the Hebrew.
How do you do the Bible sword drills without names and numbers on your written?
Yeah.
Sorry, all the good evangelicals.
I have no idea what you're talking
good,
about.
Yeah.
It sounds amazing.
We're talking Sunday school competitions
it.
that dominated my life. Yeah.
Okay. It sounds amazing, but but we actually name the books after the first sort of distinguishable name, and the first Torah portion and the first of the book is Shmot,
Yes.
which means names because it actually is sort of lineages.
These
right
are the
at
names.
beginning. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
So Can you tell us this story that's being told in Smot or Exodus, what part does it play in the Jewish tradition and the formation of the Jewish people?
Well, in reality, what we're doing as a Jewish community is we relive it according to our liturgical practices. So right now I mentioned that we're in the period of Sukkot, where we're dwelling in booths. So if you went to my house right now, you'll see that I built a hut in my backyard that
yeah.
we're eating.
This is also
meals
known
in.
as the Feast of Booths or
This
the
is
Feast
called,
of Tabernacles.
that's right, exactly, in translation, the Feast of Booths, exactly. And so we spend, our time in those Sukkot, and at Sunday school, the kids are going to be decorating the sukkah right now, which is that booth. And we are supposed to put ourselves into the shoes of our ancestors who, when they were wandering through the wilderness, they didn't have time to create permanent structures. So we create those impermanent structures that we abide in, sort of putting ourselves into this place. There's a concept in Judaism called zachor, which means to remember. And on Passover, for example, it's a time in which we sit down at the table and we remember the exodus from Egypt as though it happened to us. Because we put ourselves into that narrative to feel what it meant to be a slave, to feel what it meant to be liberated. And the idea of that is that it gives us a sense of empathy for those who might exist in the world right now who are also in need of liberation, wherever they may be. And so it's in a sense, spiritually preparing us for the task that is at hand for, I think, all people, which is, in a sense, what the Exodus sort of leads us to, which is the idea that we want more freedom for as many people as we can. So the way we view it is to put ourselves into the story. It's not just something that is happening in ancient times, but it's something that's happening with us right now. And the way that we are able to do that is by personalizing the story.
This is one of the reasons why I've invited Rabbi Noah to be here, is to learn from these traditions. How amazing does that sound as far as a teaching tool, as a way to learn, is to not just read about a story, but actually put yourself into it. And I'm also interested, Noah, in just what the story of the Exodus and the tabernacle and Mount Sinai, does that fit in the theology of Judaism, would you say?
So I think the last time I was here, we talked a little bit about Mount Sinai being the moment of revelation. I'd say the apex moment for the Jewish people is receiving the Torah.
Yes.
Torah meaning 5 books of Moses, or teachings as we describe it. And that was the apex moment for us. And then everything else in history is sort of either building up to that moment or coming down from that moment, in a sense. But as far as the tabernacle is concerned, and I know that that's something that
We'll get into
studying,
that in a little bit, but yes.
So the tabernacle really is sort of the paradigm for what houses of worship might be in the Jewish story, and we can talk about that when we get there.
Yes.
But what was the other? I forget.
Just how this story fits into the theology. So you said Mount Sinai is kind of the pinnacle.
That's right.
Everything's before or after Mount Sinai.
Yep.
Why is that? Because of the Torah?
That's right. If you think about why, sometimes I'm going to take myself out of sort of the Jewish perspective and put myself into the academic perspective for just one moment. When we think about what Judaism is a polemic against polytheism. It's an argument against multiple gods, right? And the idea being that if we live in a world of multiple gods, that those multiple gods, some of them might have different ethical criteria for how one should exist in the world. But if you're a monotheist, if you're a person that believes in one God, that means that you need to have one set of criteria or demands or ethical obligations to that one God. And so when you think about the purpose of Mount Sinai is to say that there's a universal set of values, right? Ethical relativism is a thing of polytheism, but ethical monotheism is what that moment is all about. And so Judaism cleaves to the idea that there is one ethical way of living in the world that everybody can live by. It's not just about Jews, it's about everyone.
Yes.
And so that's the idea that is that apex moment.
Yes.
And in a world in which Judaism was new, that would have been extraordinarily revolutionary.
Absolutely, 100%, yes. So speaking of the law, we spent several weeks in the Ten Commandments, in the Book of the Covenant, if you guys remember. And it's ironic because as we were speaking, and still even, there are politicians who are trying to get the Ten Commandments in schools all around their state
Which
or
10
whatever.
Commandments, right?
Right. It's got to be ironic for you.
Yeah.
But as we walked through, particularly the Book of the Covenant, there's all these really antiquated things, right? Like we had a little bit of fun talking about what happens if your bull has a habit of goring, right? And gores other people's or other bulls or whatever, and all the exchanges that have to happen within community. Obviously, there's significance there.
That's a great example, actually, of a law that actually has significance, in our world today, right?
See, we just thought it was a good heavy metal band name,
Yeah,
Habit
it
of
is.
Goring.
Excellent. I love that idea. Actually,
But tell me the significance of
the
bulls that
oxide.
gore. Yeah.
So in a lot of cases, sometimes you have like archaic laws that have derivatives from it. So it is sort of an ox. Sometimes when we say an ox that gores in the Jewish tradition, what we're referring to is a situation in which we know that there is the possibility of a repeat offense, right? So let's say, and it doesn't matter, like, another example is like a balcony without what we say, like a parapet without a balcony without a fence,
or
right?
barrier, yep.
Right? So what you have to do is, if there's a case of an ox that gores, is you have to correct the issue so that the ox doesn't gore someone else, right? So it could be, I'm trying to think of an idea that isn't so problematic, but let's say that there is, okay, let's make it an animal. Let's say it's a dog that is vicious and biting people, right? So that would be an ox that gores, according to Jewish theology, and one would have to try to figure out a way that you could prevent that dog from harming others.
Yes.
And sometimes that's awful, and as we all know. But it could also be that the owner does a better job of keeping their goring ox behind a fence.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
So this brings me perfectly to the question: is the Torah, the law, is such a highly revered, and this is everything for us as a people. How do you take these antiquated laws and make them into something that's relevant for our lives today? Am I mistaken that there's a tradition called the halakhic tradition where it's kind of how we interpret these laws? Can you take us into how you as a people engage with these laws that are a couple thousand years old?
So halakha means the way, right, or the path. Sometimes when somebody is no longer observing Jewish tradition, we'll say they're off the derech, they're off that path, they're off the way. And so the halakha exists. There's two different ways of looking at it, actually. I'm going to say this. In the Orthodox world, there's a belief that the Torah was given on Mount Sinai, and there was an oral tradition also given to Moses, which pairs the oral tradition, all of its arguments and all of the way in which our ancestors worked out these laws, was given at the same time. I'm going to leave that to the side for now and just talk about sort of liberal Judaism or progressive Judaism, which is the belief that there are certain ethical underpinnings to our tradition that are given to us in the Torah. If you look at the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, and count every single time God tells us to do something or not to do something, it makes up 613 commandments, right?
Yep.
And if you ever forget, you can open up a pomegranate and count all the seeds. Apparently there's 613 in there. I'll let you do that. I have never done that. But there are 613 commandments, and some that we cannot do after the destruction of the great temple in Jerusalem. But the rest that are, ethical in their orientation, or liturgical or religious, practical in their orientation, we can do. But how we practice those traditions, they have to respond and change to the circumstances in the world in which we live in. Halakha is the discussion of how we observe those ethical commandments in our contemporary world. Now that means the contemporary world of the 2nd century or the 4th century, and that's when the Talmud was written. And then beyond the 4th century and the 5th century and the 6th century, people would write letters back and forth to the great learned rabbis of their time, and it was known as responsa literature because they sent their letters in, they got a response, we preserved the responses. Rabbis in different communities would adjudicate the rules according to the needs of their community. And then in the modern world, in our modern principles, again, those laws would continue to play a role in how we live our lives, and what we do, and how we can live both ethically and ritually consistently with what was taught in the Torah. That's how it works.
So Rich, so just to kind of really pull out the high level stuff, it's how to wrestle with a tradition and what this means for us as a people when our tradition is thousands of years old.
And the circumstances change.
Correct.
Right?
And so you're saying the Jewish tradition is to do that in conversation,
Yeah.
in community, in culture, in different settings and scenarios. So I'm hearing this vibrant, dynamic dialogue around what does it mean to look like the people of God and to walk in this way now today. And it's not this like, we take this thing literally 100% and exact it out. It's this creative
Yes, it is
conversational process.
It is a creative process. And last time I was here, we talked a little bit about the American Constitution and how the Torah functions very much in a similar way. And then when you look at the laws that exist today, did the Constitution have in mind internet law?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, probably it didn't. However, can the Constitution have something to say about internet law? Yes. And so getting from here to there of looking at the Supreme Court arguments and legislation in America about how we live our lives over the course of the last 200 and something years to where we are today, living a constitutional life, that's very much like Judaism, only it's 3,000 years old.
Yes, thank you. I just want to give a commercial for our next sermon series, well, after Advent, is going to be this pastoral sermon series that you guys have heard us talking about, practical questions. This is the one of those rich bases that what we've been studying in Exodus can push us forward into these conversations, which is, how am I supposed to live now as a follower of Jesus? And it seems different than it did when I was in high school or in college or in 20, 30 years ago, whatever it is. And these are the conversations and dialogues we get to have with one another. I love how we get to learn from this Jewish tradition.
I'll just say one thing, that's nice I want to say something really nice about Christianity, is that you have a positive role model in Jesus, right? That's a lot of Christians, talk about following sort of the path of Jesus. If you look at the Hebrew Bible, we have a lot of negative role models in there. As far as parenting, right? Like, I wouldn't learn parenting from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Yeah.
That
Good
wouldn't be
plan.
The best parenting ideas. But that also speaks to the humanity of the book, right? So we see our human ancestors as opposed to seeing sort of a figure that we're aspiring to.
Yes.
But that it is beautiful to be able to walk in those footsteps, and for us, it's a different criteria.
I love it. So just for my own sake, just for fun, Exodus 18, what we see is Exodus 18, because you don't have the same chapters and verse divisions.
They're very close, but I'm not entirely sure because when we study, we don't study chapter and verse the same way Christians do.
Yep.
But I think I know what you're talking about.
So it's when Jethro visits Moses. They have this great conversation, and it's kind of in some ways, larger symbolic of God and the nations and Israel and the nations. But it's this interesting thing that many of us in the Christian church, I would say, really never paid attention to, which is Jethro's not part of the Jewish community.
Nope.
Jethro, it says actually in the scriptures, is a pagan priest. And all of a sudden, Jethro starts talking to Moses as if he seems to be speaking for Yahweh, for God. And that's a really odd thing for a Christian community to be witnessing in the scriptures, that this pagan priest maybe was speaking for God in some ways. How do you see that story? What's that within the tradition?
Well, I think that in the Jewish tradition, there isn't necessarily a belief that all of the truth that exists from God exists only within Judaism. And there is a belief that truth can come from surprising and wonderful places, right? So,
I like that.
and when we've talked before about the importance of studying Torah in pairs, because, the truth exists somewhere between what your friend and your neighbor and the person you're studying with has to say and what you have to say. So even when you're disputing a verse, that truth exists somewhere in the middle. Without different religious perspectives in the world, I'm afraid we would become lost. And I don't know whether I told you this story, but it's an important one. when I was living in Israel, somebody once gave me, did I tell you this story? Directions to get from Jerusalem
I don't think so.
to Tel Aviv to visit a friend. And the person wrote, begin Highway 1. And so I looked for the beginning of Highway 1. And I spent a significant amount of time looking for the beginning of Highway 1 to the point in which I was lost.
It sounded like you didn't have a smartphone.
No, it was pre-smartphone.
Yeah.
And I pulled into a gas station and I showed the instructions to the attendant and I said, like, where's the beginning of Highway 1? The person burst out laughing and said, Begin, Highway 1, Menachem Begin Expressway. Not begin spelled B-E-G-I-N, but Begin spelled B-E-G-I-N. I became so committed to finding the beginning of Highway 1 without really thinking about the possibility that it could be something else. It took the gas station attendant to look at the same word and say, no,
Yeah.
that's a name, not a place.
I'm going to steal this just so you know.
Okay, very good.
Keep going.
Which gave rise to the idea in my mind that sometimes we become so committed to a point of view that, and when we have nothing to check that point of view against, we can become lost. The idea that there are different religious faith traditions out there that sort of are reaching for the divine means that we can find beautiful truths in those traditions as well. Judaism just happens to be the religion of my birth, right? And I love it. It is my religion. But that doesn't mean that I don't appreciate the sense of divinity that comes from other religious traditions. And when you look at the Torah, the fact that truth and beauty and the Word of God can come from Moses' father-in-law is a beautiful example of how we can hear the truth that comes from other traditions as well, while maintaining the integrity of our own tradition too.
Brilliant. Thank you. And if you're struggling with that, with what we've just been talking about, I'm just going to encourage you, go read Exodus 18. Probably do it again, right? Because you might see began as begin.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sit with that a little bit, because it's right in the story. It's right in the scriptures. That's all we're talking about here. Let's get into the tabernacle and temple a little bit more, because we've been thinking about the tabernacle and temple quite a bit, right? It's a couple things. Can you first tell us, how do you, as you engage in that story, 13 chapters, 13 chapters of a list of building supplies?
Yeah. It's like IKEA.
Wake me up in the morning, right? And then, or like 7 chapters of that, and then several chapters of, and then they did it, and then they built it, How does that story have relevance for you in the Jewish community and the tradition, and what is the meaning of that, of those chapters, the building list? And I'm not asking, just give us the meaning of all the curtains and the acacia wood and the whatever. Tell us about that story and how it informs that tradition.
Thank you for that question. It's a wonderful one. When we think about the tabernacle, or what we call the Mishkan, the tabernacle really is the paradigm for community coming together in worship.
Okay.
Right? And when in a sense, it's the paradigm for a synagogue, just like it was viewed as the paradigm to establish the Great Temple. It's possible that it was the Great Temple, and then they created the sense of the tabernacle, out of that.
Yep.
But there's a number of different things that come to mind. One is theologically, it gives us the knowledge that we can worship God wherever we are, even in the wilderness, which is, even if we consider the wilderness the world, that means that God can be with us wherever we are, which is a profound theological concept for the time in which that was created.
Yes.
Because when nations that were polytheistic lost their temples, sometimes people would give up because it meant that they couldn't worship anymore.
Your God has been defeated.
Your God has been defeated, and now there's no connection. But the fact that there's this wandering place that we can still engage with God means that we believe that God can be everywhere and with us, and that is a beautiful idea in its own right. When you look at the 3 main elements that make up the Mishkan, that make up the tabernacle, it's the menorah. They spend a lot of time talking about the menorah. The altar, they spend a lot of time talking about the altar, and it's the ark.
Yes.
that holds the Ten Commandments and the remnants of the original Ten Commandments that broke.
Yep.
And those three aspects, which is, if you look at the menorah, the idea of spiritual enlightenment, and the altar, which represents like the concept of repentance and maybe liturgical connection. And you look at the third element, which is the Ark of the Covenant, which sort of symbolizes law. Then you get the three elements that really make up not only Judaism, but makes up what our synagogues are supposed to be. When we refer to the synagogue, we refer to it as a Beit HaMidrash, which means a house of assembly, a place where people come together, a house of study, a Beit Knesset, which is a house of assembly, and a Beit Tefillah, which means a house of prayer. So with the idea of tefillah sort of corresponds with the idea of the sacrificial worship, that we now engage in the words of our lips rather than a sacrifice of bulls, where we have the idea of spiritual enlightenment through coming together as a community, and then we also have the idea of the study of the law. That makes up what our houses of worship need to be. And so it sets that precedent. It sets the idea of what our religious faith is supposed to be based around.
And this narrative of the tabernacle and the wilderness, and this is how you worship me in the wilderness, we've talked about this, but I would love to just bring our friends into it. When is your best guess, and whether it's Jewish scholars or also just your best guess on when that was written and why?
So there's a belief in the academic world, and because I'm a liberal Jew, I take both the spiritual and the academic and don't necessarily feel challenged by the contradictions. So most likely...
You're among friends, by the way.
you.
Yeah.
Most likely after the destruction of the Great Temple in Jerusalem, the first temple,
Yes.
when the Babylonians took the Jews into exile in Babylon, it makes the most sense that people were sort of concerned with the idea of worshiping God wherever they may be, right? That they can still feel that connection. Another aspect of that connection from the Great Temple to the tabernacle is that the priestly class and the Levites were invested in the idea of the temple worship, since it was their responsibility. And so it's most likely that, that if you were looking for authorship from an academic perspective, that it would be the priests and the Levites who were sort of infusing this into the past to say, this is part of our national cohesion, this is part of our historical story, so that we never forget it, we never, that we never stop wishing to practice our religion in that way. And so it makes the most sense that, that the specifics about the tabernacle story, even if there was preceding historical moment that speaks to the truthfulness of the historical accuracy of the story, it makes the most sense that during the Babylonian exile that they would be focusing on it so specifically.
Which, in a moment of crisis,
Yeah.
the temple is gone, our national identity in some ways are gone. How do we exist as a people of God? And does God even exist anymore? Right? These are the questions you ask in exile, perhaps.
Yeah, maybe.
It was really fun when we were talking the other day, and you mentioned this verse that I've been hammering pretty much every single Sunday, which is Exodus 25:8, right? But you mentioned it as significant to you, which is super fun, and you even have a little bit of a different translation. So in Exodus 25:8, I'm just going to read it real quick for us so we can have it. God's saying, I'm going to give you all these instructions, and here's the place where I want you to worship, and here's all the materials to bring. And God says, then have them make a sanctuary for me, and I will dwell among them.
Yeah.
In my New International Version, it says, I will dwell among them. Tell us what.
So actually, this verse is on the wall of our synagogue.
Come
right?
on.
Yeah. So it's on the wall in our sanctuary.
So awesome.
So yeah, it is one of our greatest hits, I suppose.
Tell me why.
All right. So the Hebrew is V'asuli mikdash v'shechanti b'tocham, and probably the most literal translation of that Hebrew is, and you will build for me a sanctuary, and I shall dwell within them, right? And the
So ours is, I will dwell among them.
Right.
Yours is within them.
That's right, within them. Betocham, yeah, within them. I guess you could translate it among them as well, but probably a more direct is within them.
Yep.
And so the rabbis of old, in some of the what we call midrash, which is sort of their expository response to the text, where rabbis are discussing it, they were deeply invested, and they noticed the grammar in the Hebrew, really. And they noticed that Be'asuli Mikdash, and I shall build for you or you shall build for me a sanctuary, right, is in a singular form. Then it goes on to say, and you shall build for me a sanctuary, and I shall dwell within them. Now, it raises the question, is where is God dwelling, right? If it's singular, then why plural? And the rabbis said, well, that's because God dwells within the people, which is very similar to God dwells among the people, right?
Yes.
It's a very similar concept.
Yeah.
But that really speaks to the nature of what the rabbis then did after the destruction of the Second Temple. Because at that point, it became pretty clear once the Romans,
First century. Yeah.
once we rebelled and the Romans kicked us out, it was pretty clear to us that it would be a long time before we would be able to rebuild the temple, if at all.
Yes.
Right? And so that idea spoke to them very specifically about what the future might hold. And what they said is, okay, where does God dwell? God dwells in they basically identified three places where God would dwell. One is within the synagogues that we would build and create wherever we would be, all facing towards Jerusalem because of the desire to always return to our ancestral homeland. The other is that God would dwell in our homes. And if you've ever been to a Sabbath meal, you'll see some of the recreation of what was happening in the temple, like as opposed to having the double sacrifice on the Sabbath, before the Sabbath rather, you'll see that Jews will place two loaves of challah on a plate, and they'll take a knife and they'll cut the knife, sort of symbolic of what was taking place in the temple. So they'll say the home and the table is the altar, in a sense.
Okay.
And then the third place is within the human soul. And so this idea that God would dwell within them becomes this idea of where is God dwelling? It's God is dwelling within the places of worship we create, within the homes that are so important and essential to the development of human beings, and within the souls of every human being.
Brilliant. Thank you. Do you hear the rich tradition and the similarity in how we get to learn from the one another in these traditions? Oh man, it's 11:15. Okay. We're going to be done in a minute.
All right, I'll try to you ask a rabbi a question, we go on and on.
I'm not sure.
You could do one-word answers.
No. Just if you could say, okay, we're going to do some golden calf, studies, and then we're going to wrap it up in a couple of weeks. If you could, this is not a question I asked Rabbi Cherkoff, so just sorry. If you could give us an encouragement of how to kind of, as we walk out of Exodus, how to let this seep into our everyday lives. How would you say this is Exodus? If I could say, here's Exodus in a nutshell and how it might shape and form a little bit of the way you live in the world, how would that be?
So Exodus is a constant paradigm in our lives, right? So when we look at the Hebrew, we find a lot of meaning in Hebrew. When you see the word Egypt, in Hebrew it's actually Mitzrayim. And Mitzrayim is actually referring to the Nile. And if you ever look at a map, the Nile is sort of like this green, narrow place. And so Mitzrayim means a narrow place, right? And so when you think about the experience of slavery in Egypt, it was an experience of narrowness, right? And then our people thank God, are liberated from that narrowness. And they enter into the wilderness where, all bets are off as to how you live, right?
Yes.
But it's still somewhat narrow, and your world is opening up. Sometimes you have to have acts of faith in order to get to the other side of the things that stand in your way. There's a beautiful story in our tradition that speaks of a man named Nachshon, which is the idea is that when God told Moses to lift his staff to part the sea, nothing happened. And then it happened. Then God did it again. Nothing happened. Moses did it again. Nothing happened until one man named Nachshon walked into the water, and the water came up to his knees. The water came up to his waist. The water came up to his shoulders, to his ears. Finally, he looked into the sky, and then and only then did the sea part.
Wow.
And that's sort of an idea that when we, live our lives with being able to take steps towards the future, despite what might stand in our way, that we might be able to see the other side. Then we receive the Torah, which is an idea of like, this is, you have to follow sort of an ethical criteria in life.
Yes.
That you have to live according to certain values and ideas. Then our people come to the border of the promised land, and they're filled with fear, right? And it's only because of that fear, their inability to see that, that God, with faith in God, that they could take that land from the Canaanites and be there, that they're sent back to wander for another 40 years, right? But at the end of that road, our people stand upon the borders of the promised land, and then they are able to enter in. I would say to you that the fact, we read this as a cycle, by the way, and as a Jewish people, when we read the cycle, we never actually enter into the land, because the next book is where that takes place, not at the end of Deuteronomy.
Yep.
So we're living according to a cycle where we see that every year when we read this story, we're reminded that sometimes in our lives we enter into places of narrowness, but our desire is for an expansive freedom. And the real key is that it shouldn't just be for us, it should be for everyone. And that's, I think, why also, if you were looking at Christian theology, Passover, the spring holiday, falls at the same time, usually around the same time as Easter, because Easter represents that concept of rebirth and sort of the fullness, moving from the narrowness of, suppose, from death to rebirth and life. And so both of our traditions in different ways talks about that journey.
Perfect, thank you. First of all, let's thank Rabbi Noah for being here with us.
My pleasure. Thank you, Andy. Good being with you.
I didn't ask you this ahead of time, so you're going to see a real answer in real time. We're about to celebrate communion. We're going to finish off our time with communion in a song. Would you be able to, if you can't do this, tell me I can't do that, Randy. But would you be able to do the Hebrew blessing over the bread and the cup? The blessed art thou, O Lord our God?
Absolutely.
Okay, and then I'll read the words of institution following that, but I'd appreciate it if you could just bless this time. Thank you.
Absolutely. Right now?
Yeah,
Okay.
if you don't mind. And you can translate it after you're
Sure.
done, please.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. And what I just said was, blessed are you, eternal our God, ruler of the universe, who brings bread from the earth. And I just want to say one thing about that blessing, because it seems like it's a weird blessing, because I've never seen a bread tree.
Yeah.
The idea is that in that blessing, we're giving thanks not only for that act of creation that most farmers know, like if you plant a seed, it either grows or it doesn't grow. We're giving thanks for that act of creation, but we're also giving thanks for all of the process along the way that brings bread to our door. And that means giving thanks for the world in which it rains, giving thanks for the farmers that are doing their job, thank you for the trucks that get the bread to us, and thank you for the ability to be able to sustain ourselves with that bread. And that's important for all religion to understand, is that there may be creative acts at the very moment, at the very beginning, but there is a process that brings religion and that brings the goodness that we experience through ritual like you're about to do into our lives.
Thank you for making that meaningful, Noah. I'm just going to read this real quick. I'm going to ask the servers to come forward, and worship band, you guys can come on up. You can have a seat, Noah. Thank you. And this is just the Apostle Paul. This is just as Rabbi Noah read us these words that have been read in this tradition for centuries. I'm going to read words that have been read in our tradition for centuries, and that is, "For I received from the Lord what I also passed on to you. The Lord Jesus, on the night he was betrayed, took bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and said, 'This is my body, which is for you. Do this in remembrance of me.' In the same way, after supper, he took the cup, saying, "The cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this whenever you drink it in remembrance of me. For whenever you eat this bread and drink this cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he returns." So I'm just going to invite you, friends, as we finish our time together in the Lord's table, reminding ourselves that we are here because of Jesus, and we move out of these doors because of Jesus, and we raise and lift our voices because of Jesus and the redemption and the life that we have found in him. So whenever you're ready, I'll invite you to, on this side of the sanctuary, come up this middle aisle and go back wherever you want. Come up this side aisle on this side and go back wherever you want, and we'll celebrate the Lord's table and worship together to finish our time.
I've heard 1,000 stories of what they think you're like, but I've heard the tender whisper of love in the dead of night, and you tell me that you're pleased and that never alone. Let's all stand and sing. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. I've seen many searching for answers far and wide, but I know we're searching for answers. Only you provide, 'cause you know just what we need before we say a word. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. Love so undeniable, I can hardly speak. Peace so unexplainable, I can hardly think as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still into love. Love, love, you're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am.
Well, friends, I want to thank you again so much for being here. I've loved this time that we've gotten to share. I want to encourage you, check out the Info Center. There are sign-ups back there for shoveling, for helping in the cafe, for the learning community. There's also coffee mugs. If this is your first time here this morning, thank you for being here. And we have a gift for you. It's a Bruce City Church coffee mug. You can see them on the first table right over there. Go grab one and just know that we're glad and grateful you're here. And with that, I would want to invite Rabbi Noah to come up one more time. Jonathan, if you could make his mic live, thank you. We're going to together give this benediction from the book of Numbers, from Numbers 6. But Rabbi Noah is going to speak it in Hebrew, and I'm going to speak it in English. So if you would receive the benediction.
Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha.
The Lord bless you and keep you.
Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka.
The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you.
Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom.
The Lord look upon you with favor and give you peace. Amen. Thank you, Rabbi Noah. Have a great week, friends. We'll see you next week.
Good to be with you. Thank you.